Good morning. It is good to see you today. Thank you so much for being here. Would you turn with me, please, to Matthew chapter 25? Matthew chapter 25. We're going to talk for just a few moments about the parable of the talents. As you probably remember, this is a section that has to do with preparedness, being ready for the Lord's return, being ready for when He comes again to wrap it all up, and then the judgment and things of that nature. And so when Jesus first begins His preaching and teaching ministry, He talks a lot about the nature of the kingdom. Here's what the kingdom is going to be like. And that, of course, then leads into here's what the citizen of the kingdom is going to be like. As He nears the end of His preaching time, He begins to talk a lot about here's how things are going to go at the end. Here's how it's going to be when it all wraps up. And so the parable of the talents is in this section of here's what's going to happen in the end. Look with me in verse 14. Verse 14, it says, "For it is just like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them." Just that verse. Think about just that verse. That describes the life you and I are now living and the circumstances under which we live that life. In John 14, Jesus said, "I go to prepare a place for you." And the whole thrust is, I'm going to prepare and then I'm going to come back and receive you to myself. That's what verse 14 is saying. And so Jesus is establishing for us through this parable that He's going to go away and leave us to do the work we need to do, and then He's going to come back. That's just the nature of your life and my life on this planet. And it really doesn't matter what else we do or how else we see life or what our other interests are. None of that makes any difference because life is simply about Jesus has left us with work to do, and He's coming back. And if we can get verse 14 in our minds, our lives can be dramatically changed. If we can understand what we're really doing here, it's not about happiness here. It's not about contentment here. It's not about what can I get here. It's not about all of those things, although they certainly may factor in. The first thing life is about is doing the work He has left us to do. Because as we apply the parable, we quickly understand that He is the master who has gone on a journey, and He'll come back. And at that moment, then, we need to be prepared for His return. So I want you to think about that. We'll read through the parable, then we'll make some observations, and we're doing it a little differently than we typically do. We'll spend this session talking about some things, and then the next session at 11 o'clock, we'll talk primarily about the one-talent man and about what he did and didn't do, what he knew and didn't know. So read with me beginning at verse 14 again. Verse 14, Matthew 25. "For it is just like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, depending on each one's ability. Then he went on a journey immediately. Immediately the man who had received 5 talents went and put them to work and earned 5 more. In the same way, the man with 2 earned 2 more. But the man who had received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, 'Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I have earned 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy.'" Verse 22. The man with 2 talents also approached, and he said, "Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I've earned 2 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy." The man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, "Master, I know you. You're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours." His master replied to him, "You evil, lazy servant, if you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I returned. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." This parable is one that everybody knows. I mean, we learned this one when we're little. We kind of get the concept of the parable of the talents. We usually apply that to money because the story does that. It mentions the concepts of earning interest. If you would have just done the minimum, we at least would have gotten something. And so we tend to think in terms of money. But you know the application of the parable goes so far beyond that. It gets to time, talents, abilities, opportunities. It gets to anything that the master has given. And so the very first thing I want us to do this morning is to tie this parable to the principle we see in James chapter 1. So turn with me over to James chapter 1 really quickly. I want to tie this principle with James chapter 1. Turn over there with me, please. In James chapter 1, you have a statement in verse 17, James 1:17. It's a very simple statement, but one of those statements that helps us orient ourselves regarding God. It's good and appropriate for us to have the right view of God. James 1:17 says this, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, who does not change like shifting shadows." All right, I want you to draw a connection between every good gift, every perfect gift, every good thing comes from God, and this parable in Matthew 25, where the master provides talents, he provides resources, he provides opportunities for his servants. We need to see God as the one sharing with us, providing for us, giving opportunities to us. That's who he is and that's what he does. If it is a good opportunity, it somehow, some way came from him. If it is an ability that you have that can be used in his kingdom, it somehow, some way came from him. Every good and perfect gift comes from him. And so we begin in Matthew 25, first of all, understanding that it is our Master, our God, who has given us every good thing we have, every good opportunity we have, every good ability we have. He has allowed for our possessions. He has allowed for our resources. It is God who is behind it all and is the source of it all. And we need to see him that way. We are in right now what we typically refer to as a season of giving, a season of gifts. We like gifts. We need to think about God as the giver of every good gift. And then we apply the principles in the parable. So the first thing, obviously, then, is what we have, whatever it is, whether it is time, opportunity, ability, whether it is resources, financial or otherwise, it is a gift from the Master. It is a gift from God. Look back at Matthew 25, verse 14 one more time. "For it is just like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them." Think about that just for a minute. Think about the concept of the creator of the world, the one who made you and me, spoke us into existence. There is a sense in which he has entrusted his possessions to us. Now, usually when we think about that in the larger sense, we think about, well, he's given us the world like Adam and Eve in the garden. You know, I've given it to you to tend, to take care of, and that's great, and that's part of it, but that's really not the focus. The focus within the context of the Master has given a gift and then gone away, and then he's coming back. The focus would be what? It's not the creation generally. It's his church, his business, his kingdom. And so the Master has entrusted that to us. And there are expectations on the backside of that. But we'll never do well with those expectations until we get in our minds very clearly that God has given it to us. We have not earned it, It is not that we did so well at some point that He said, okay, now I think you're ready for the responsibility. No, He has given us responsibility, each according to our own needs. It says that in verse 15. According to our own ability, He has provided for us what we need to do the work. And we might be helped if we think of it in terms of an investment. That God has invested in each of us, not so He gets a return, so He is somehow enriched and so He is made better. That's not it at all. He does not need to be enriched by us, but He has invested in us so that we might do work for Him, for His cause, to enrich His cause. That, of course, is the souls of mankind. And so that makes our life become not so much centered around what we want and what we think is important and what we like, but it reorients us so that we see ourselves as servants. Some versions say slaves. Some of your versions will say stewards. Servants who are going about His work with His resources to help His cause being the souls of mankind. If we can see life like that, then kind of maybe we get a little bit better at putting self aside and doing His work. But there's a second thing that goes along with that. You know, the 5-talent man, he earned 5 more. The 2-talent man earned 2 more. And so even the abundance that we generate, even the good that is done, even the things that go well and that generate more, that belongs to the master also. When the master returns, the 5-talent man comes back and says, you gave me 5, I have 5 more. And those 5 more belong to the master also. And so what that does is it creates a sense of humility for us where we never ever say, oh, look what I've done. I just think I have done such a good job of what the master gave me. I know I started with what he gave me, but look at what I have made of what he gave me. That's not it at all. What He gives us in the beginning belongs to Him. What we might be able to generate with what He gave us in the beginning belongs to Him also. Any increase is His. It's what Paul told the Corinthians. God gives the increase. We're just doing the work. And we're doing the work so we can be prepared when He returns. Now, of course, another upside of doing the work is that those for whom you work are also prepared when He returns. What we end up with, if it is done according to His system, what we end up with is a whole bunch of us working for the Master and building for the Master so that when He returns, a whole bunch of us are ready for His return. We're prepared. But all along the way, every single bit of it belongs to Him. There is no selfishness with Him. Sometimes we see God as the one who demands of us. Sometimes we see Him as the one who, He'll give us a gift, but it has all these strings attached, you know. And so we then begin to wonder, do I really want a gift that has all these strings attached? That's not God at all. He has given us the free gift of salvation. Along with that free gift of salvation, there is a built-in responsibility. And so as we use that gift, what we're doing is we're making ourselves more like what He would have us to be. It's not that it makes Him better when we do the work, it's that it makes us better. Sometimes I forget that God can get along just fine without me. My Creator can do okay without me. I need Him. And I need His people. And I need His system. And I need His expectations. I need His obligations. They don't enrich Him. They don't make Him any better. He can't be any better. I can't make God any better by what I do. It's just foolish to think that. But if I do His will, I can surely make me better. And so when I understand that it's all been given, not to enrich the giver, but to enrich the ones to whom it has been given, when I begin to see it like that, then I become a lot more appreciative. The 5-talent man and the 2-talent man in the story, at no time exhibit any kind of an attitude toward the giver, toward the master, except humble servitude, appropriate servitude. They render to the master the service required. And they seem to do it with a good attitude. That is an understood aspect of the parable. We have other parables where service is rendered and it is not rendered happily. In this one, they're glad to do their part. And I love the way the master talks with them after they settle up. Remember the 5-talent man, the 2-talent man, they settle up? He says in verse 21, share your master's joy. Share your master's joy. That's what your Creator really wants for you. Think of God as the gift giver. Think of God as the one who wants to share with you all good things. That's really the thrust of John 3:16, isn't it? For God so loved the world. He loved the world this much. He so loved the world that He was willing to sacrifice His Son. So what? So we could share in His joy. So in a season of giving, see God as the giver. See God as the one who, well, He owns it all. And He is sharing it with us, so we will do our part in His service so we can enjoy the blessings He has provided for us. It's kind of hard for us sometimes to get the fullness of that. We live in a world that is dominated by evil. I know that it is not literally in every one of our homes and all of that, but the world is dominated by evil. It just is. The whole world lies in the power of the evil one, meaning that Satan has sway right now. And if you have to break it up into percentages, of course, we're not able to do it, but the flood certainly helps us with that, doesn't it? 8 souls out of however many were on the earth. 8 souls were saved. I don't know what it would be like today. I don't know. I'm kind of afraid to even think about that, but we understand that we live in a world dominated by sin and evil. We get that. We know that. But there is this joy to be found in anticipating the joy that we can have then because of the good that the Master has provided us, because He has entrusted His possessions to us, His church, His people. And so as we look at life, be sure that we see our God as He really is. And be sure that we see service to Him as it really is. There's a lot of folks right now, I'm afraid, who begin to look at the traditional concept of church service as this terrible burden to bear. I mean, right now we're wearing face coverings in church. Nobody wants to do that. I have heard some folks say they like the social distancing business. Just keep back a little bit. That's fine. Maybe we can keep that going. I'm not really in favor of that, but I get it. But we sometimes see it as all these things we have to go through and do and these obligations and these demands that are placed on us. We need to be real careful about that. You and I are living in the moment where the Master has entrusted His possessions to us and He's gone away and He's coming back. That's where we are. And the whole thrust is, let's be ready when He returns. So, we'll wrap this one up to get you all out of here and get ready for the next group. Here's what I want you to think about today, tomorrow, the coming days. First of all, am I ready for His return? Am I remaining prepared for His return? Am I staying ready for His return? Then I want you to think about the fact that He has entrusted something valuable to us. God has entrusted His possessions to you. The Creator of the world has entrusted to His creation His kingdom. That's a big deal. Are you doing that work? Are you going to be that 5-talent or that 2-talent person who says, I've put it to use. I've used the opportunities. You could run from here and go in many different directions. One place I think about often is 2 Kings chapter 2, where Elijah is about to ascend to heaven in a whirlwind. Remember the chariot of fire? He's going to go, and who takes over in his place? Elisha, you remember that? The idea of picking up the mantle and carrying on the work and being sure that it keeps going. We could go for a long time in that direction talking about God has entrusted this to us. Are we going to maintain it? Are we going to keep it going? Are we going to be thankful for it? Are we going to do all we can do to work for His cause right here? We can talk about that. We can talk about our families. He has entrusted to each one of us some measure of family and family influence. Whether it is blood relatives or whether it is people we're associated with, they're folks with whom we're close. Are we working for the kingdom's sake there? Are we trying to make that 5-10 or that 2-4? Are we doing that? At every level, you and I have opportunities to work for the Master. Are we doing it? Then the last thing I want you to think about is the whole concept of sharing in His joy. That when He returns, everything's going to be settled up. The Apostle Paul talks about that in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, the judgment seat of Christ. Everything will be called to account, and there'll be a settling up, just like there is in Matthew 25. He called His servants to Him. They come and they presented what they did. We're going to do that. And if we work hard at this, if we use what He has given us, we will share in His joy. However joyous your life is or isn't here becomes completely irrelevant there. There is no joy you can experience here that is commensurate or comparable to the joy you will experience there. We have such a hard time transferring in our minds the concept of happiness and joy from earth to happiness and joy in the presence of God. It's just not really possible for us to do it, but the text talks about it. The Revelation tries to paint pictures for us. No tears in heaven. No sorrow. Share in the joy of your Master by being prepared. Be prepared by working in His kingdom, using what He has entrusted to you. That's where happiness is to be found, true happiness. If we can help you in any way, you let us know while we stand and sing this morning.